G'day guys, welcome back to In My Shed. I'm BC. I've written out a list of things I have to do and I've sort of run out of paper. So many jobs and not enough time. One thing that I have decided is to go one machine at a time and do all the necessaries, like poor old Mr. Wrong Fu hasn't had a good service and a tickle up for a long time. And I'm also going to change its arrangement. The fellow who was originally using it for me, that's going back about 20 years. By the way, it's a 1998 model made in Taiwan, and it's called a BM200A. I think Rong Fu called it a 450. But anyway, it's quite a good machine for the price. It's got limitations. One of them, it's built for people that are 1.1 metre tall. The table height is very low, so my employee, instead of chocking the machine up, put a riser block in it, and I think that's about 90% of my problems. It's given a lot of vibration. So that's going to get the coke and sauce today or tomorrow, as it appears. I've got a couple of simple indexes on it that I thought you'd like to see. I'm also going to pull the coolant tank out. I'm not going to use this grinder wet ever, but I might have to use that on one of my other machines. I don't know, but sitting inside of it's not doing me any good. It's got a bit of unusual history. I think it came out of one of the universities. It had a variable speed box, or still got the speed control in there, a variable speed DC motor up on top, pulley drive down to this, and I think they were using it for a cutting off operation. But that's previous history. So yeah, before we break it down, I'll bring you in, show you the indexes and a little bit of history on them, and then we can start doing the mechanical stuff. Okay guys, this is the first index that we'll look at. It's just a piece of cast iron, cast as a slotted bar, in the end of which I think is about a 14 or 16 mil piece of rod that has a grub screw on the side retaining it, a 10 mil wide flat machined on one side and two drill and tap holes. So you just mount a indexing finger off that, and as of here, it would just need a old jigsaw blade that has the teeth ground off it. They flex quite good. I also use this as a flat bar on a machine table to put a machinist square on for lining up the countersinks on the back of the form relief attachment. So very easy to use. It can also be put on top of the workhead and indexed off that. And I better move the camera up because you just missed out on that. I'll back out just a touch. Yeah, about there. Okay, it can also be mounted on the top of the workhead as an overhead indexer. Now this particular item, I've shown it before, but it's worth showing again. The main parts of it came out of my air spindle unit, which I haven't been using ever. We did use it first for annular cutters and found it to be a real pain in the bum. This is just a bit of angle iron with a slot milled in it, mount on the top bolt, so you can change its position for the diameter of the cutter and backwards and forwards to get a bit more adjustability. The bar is threaded on the end and just held on by a nut. This block and the thimble are the only technical parts. This has got a couple of grub screws on the end to hold it to the bar, and that is a thimble assembly and a milled away piece of bar. So I've shown all of that in previous episodes, but not too hard to make and really useful items. Okay, well, I'll back you away a little bit. We'll strip it down. I think I might even give it a bit of a vacuum at the same time. Not that this part will be overly interesting, but I'll put it in anyway. You're used to being bored when you watch me. Been jury-rigged like this for 20 years. Even if this sort of thing is all you can afford as a tool and cutter grinder, I would say go ahead and pick up something like this. They are a very good starter, very adjustable. You've got lots of different axes you can move. So the capacity of the machine is quite good, and it'll do a lot of operations. And it's also capable of running a different wheel on the other side of the spindle, which might be something I'll investigate for gulleting cutters, try and get rid of that vibration that's been hounding me for years. Okay, off with the water. That fell off. Part of the problem has been, as this was originally set up with a couple of spaces under it, because the workhead has a locating tongue underneath it to go into the T-slot, and that was interfering with how we were going to use it. But it made it all just a highly cantilevered piece of bloody vibrating junk. I'll find the other one of these later. God, this has got some crap on it. I suppose I would too if I was living in this position for 20 years. Righto, the abomination is now off the table. Table we haven't seen for a long, long time. So very crude manufactured T-bolts. Here's one I'll show you that I hadn't seen before this particular grinder. That's a T-bolt with the base machined off to a diamond shape, and for some applications it's quite good. You just put it through the table and rotate it, and you've got a T-bolt. Finished the job, and this is on the bottom of my diamond dresser, rotated and out it comes. So that was quite handy. Yep, that's definitely been shop fabricated. The welder's about as good as me. Okay, next thing will be give it a bit of a spruce up and try and mount the workhead back up. Bring you back then. Not a lot to see here, just my old engine crane with the short legs. It still has enough lift to get 250 or 300 kilos out. I just lift it up a quarter-inch off the floor, slide it out a bit at a time, and at least now I can get all the way around it to get the wires for the coolant pump undone and give it a good clean-up. But you don't lose all of the versatility of the crane, you just lose that little bit. Bye for now. G'day guys, while I've got the other roller door open, getting at the wiring for the coolant pump removal, I thought I'd point out one of the reasons I like this grinder so much. The lower table, that's the frame, is supported by an intermediate frame, and as well as that being moved backwards and forwards by the in-feed lead screw, if you undo a bolt either side, you can move this whole frame backwards and forwards about 200 millimetre, and that increases the work envelope of the bloody main table substantially. Makes it a very, very versatile machine, even though it's such a short table, but it's still, the table's about 6 inches longer than a Clarkson, so it's not all that bad. There's provision here for a rear wheel guard and a set of wheel flanges. And I'm very disappointed in one of my staff. I took these flanges off and found a pair of Stilsons had been put on the bloody shaft on the back. Like, that is just an absolute no-no. What else can we see back here? Good look at the rise and fall hand wheel. The main column. And at some stage I'll show you a weld repair that I personally did on a motor mount bracket with a CI N55, I think it was, nickel 55 electrode. And, oh no, it's very bright, it'd have to be a nickel 99. And it did an excellent job. Okay, that's showing you the other side, and one of the reasons I like it. Please also note that this table, unlike the Clarkson, this has got a full set of Gibbs strips. Well, the Clarkson has Gibbs strips, but this has got ball oilers for the table. And it's designed to run wet. And I've tried it dry, and it's bloody awful. Wet it, and it's good. Bye for now. Okay, guys, back on this cutter business. I'll zoom you out shortly, and you'll see how I managed to get the Clarkson doing the job. I think I've got a few parts missing off the factory kit, but that's where we're grinding now in the gullet. I've managed to get it what I call pass-through grinding, and I don't know whether it'll bring the cutter up to as per new spec, but it's at least looking promising. Now I've got the cutter tilted back at 45 degrees, which is the factory amount for cutters over 5.8, I think, and below 5.8 it's 35 degrees, back this way a little bit. So I'll zoom you out and see what we've done. Okay, the cutter passes underneath the wheel and passes through. So each time I drop the wheel by 1 thou, I'm taking just a little bit more out of that bit just to the right of the cutting edge. Now I'll get you out of the way again. I don't want my camera getting too close to the grinding dust. It's got a fancy automatic iris in the front of it. And I think that's going to be about as good as I can get it. So I'll make a little bit of noise, do a few passes. It's very awkward to do with the camera in here, but we'll give it a go. And the problem for me has always been getting the cutter underneath the wheel at the correct angle. And I'd forgotten entirely about this block there. It's supposed to be for mounting the radius or ball end cutter grinding attachment, and I only found out about that through a bit of reading about a week or 2 weeks ago. But this lowers the base down substantially when you compare it to the standard L bracket. So I would say I would have no troubles at all even gashing the end of long series cutters, but I don't know how I'd go with chatter getting out that far. Now, I can't turn you around, got the light over there. After we finish here, I'll swing you around to the Rong Fu. I had exactly the same problem there. I just couldn't get the height over the table, but I would be able to use this block on the workhead over there and achieve exactly the same thing as I have here. If you can't get the wheel head up high enough, you bring the work down low. Okay, I'll bring you back when it progresses a bit further. Okay, fellas, there's the job almost done. You can see that there's a tiny little web between all of the teeth there, and if I go another thou or two deeper, it'll break that web. But you can see where the gulleting coming through from each side. And I'll be honest, this has just taken me an enormous amount of time. It would not be, or would not have been, a profitable enterprise if I wasn't just trying to prove a point that I could do it. But with a bit more courage, I'd be taking more than a thou at a pass. And I think in the factory they'd be taking many thou. But if you look down inside the gullet, I'll try and rotate the cutter a bit. You can see it's beautifully ground, and the finish in there is just superb. I'll get a bit more light on the subject. Might help from a different angle. And that's probably a little bit better. You can see down inside the gullet. So we have our primary clearance angle, our secondary clearance angle, and then the gash, or the gullet. So a lot of work in sharpening one of these cutters. Having read the book and applied their suggested 45 degrees, only to find out that the factory used substantially less than that. So I don't know who's right, me or the factory, or the book. But is it worth doing this? Yes. This one might have taken me 25 minutes or whatever, just a gash, but when you've got half a dozen lined up, you'd knock them through fairly quick. Also, this will give you a good look at the indexer in play. I'll just back it out a touch. Now this time I've got the Clarkson short indexing arm on what would be, or what was, the underneath of the workhead. So indexing from underneath. And it's just a bell crank. Cranked down at about 3/4 of an inch offset, and a grub screw in the side holding the indexing finger. And the indexing finger is just a bit of round rod, captive by the grub screw, milled halfway through, drilled and tapped, and then a bit of jigsaw blade. So that's all in all a very, very simple job. Okay, I'll swing you around and show you the Rong Fu set up similarly, and similarly failed. Okay, guys. Hafco, Hare and Forbes were very nice. They sent me a operator's manual and a parts breakdown, even though it's 28 years old or whatever. And the parts manual shows 3 socket head cap screws down here holding the column onto the main base. Then there's nothing. I looked up from underneath with an inspection mirror and a torch, and you can see a threaded hole up there, but I couldn't see anything in it. So I thought, bloody hell, I better investigate this. And I started to punch down into it, and what they've done must be the export model. They've put countersunk screws in from the top and bogged over it and painted it. How the hell slotted head countersunk screws are expected to hold, I don't know. But that's a bit of a laugh, the export model. But still, my go-to grinder, I will now try that block base on the other workhead, but I don't know whether the back of it will be able to go down far enough. But I've learned a bit about tool and cutter grinding. I'm now a very successful and experienced in-mill gashing agent. And the factory didn't grind that cutter as per the book at 45 degrees. Oh well, at least you got another episode of things to laugh at in my workshop. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll bring you back in on the next episode of cutter grinding capers. Well, look at this. After a lot of puffing and panting and a bit of swearing, a nice little coolant pump, self-contained tank, wiring loom and outlet hose. It hasn't been turned on for 20 years that I know of, so I thought I'd lift the lid off and have a look inside the tank, and surprise, surprise, it's not full of mould and mushrooms. The water's all evaporated, and there's about an inch or inch and a half of bloody oil in the bottom of the tank. So I don't think they'd be running oil. I just assume that that's the water soluble after it's all evaporated away. So if it's not an aluminium rotor, it's probably still a good pump, but it looks really well made. So as I said, the machine is from Taiwan, not from mainland China, and some of these early Rongfu machines were built very, very well. One thing I will change, there's no holes in the base for provision for bolting it down to the floor or to a wooden base or anything. It's meant to be a freestanding machine, and I can only think that if the floor wasn't perfectly level, that's going to induce a lot of vibration. So I'll be modifying that one way. I think drilling holes through the base to put screws down through it might be hard, so I might just screw some angles to the side of it so I can use the angles to bolt it down to some dunnage to get rid of any vibration. Okay, there's the machine in all her splendour, and I think that if I was setting up a mobile tool grinding van, something to go around doing annular cutters and taps, etc., you can take that mid-frame off the base, even if you want to keep the drip tray there. But it'd be the perfect thing for mounting inside a Toyota Hi-Ace or something like that and run around sharpening cutters. A few people have done that in the past in Brisbane, and they've done very well. They've had an import agency for the cutters, and one bloke had 3 vans on the road at one stage, but they all succumbed to the cheap and nasty hoo-flung dung cutters, but at least they're proven to be worth every cent you don't pay for it. Now, when I first started sharpening cutters, we were sharpening, oh God, I've got to think now, Hojin cutters to start with, and then slugger cutters, and we were probably getting between 200 and 250 holes per sharpening, and now the customers seem happy to get 20 to 25 because they're cheap cutters. They don't mind how many holes they get because they're cheap. These bastards never did mathematics at school. None of them. Okay, bye for now, rant over, and if I take the table off, I'll show you. If I don't, I won't. Bye for now.